All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Wow. Folks, please be seated. This is extraordinary. I'm humbled and indeed gratified by your recorded applause. It means so much to me. And a Wednesday show is super special. And let me tell you why. Brother John Rothman comes through, and I'll share with you, as Brother John Rothman comes through, the presidential scholar and political historian, I will share with you a criticism that I received. I know that it's probably remarkable.
What?
Nobody's ever happy.
A double what? Yeah. Someone feeling that I had mocked John Rothman, and I will discuss that.
Who is having that conversation?
I'm just saying, it's out there.
Mock everybody?
Right. I mean, I think mockery is one of the cornerstones of this show. So anyway, I will share those remarks. Also, I got another critical email, which I've, and you know we love the criticism.
I've received a lot of positive letters.
All right, so we'll get into that. Kim is here.
Kim, how are you?
Albert is here.
Thanks, Tony.
Come on, Tony is not here.
Albert, thank you.
All right, let's get it on, everybody. I am so ready to ride. Had a major, there it is. Eugenio de Arnal. Hola! Eugenio probably doesn't even speak any Spanish, but I see the Latino surname, and I go right into my Espanol. Eugenio de Arnal. Gracias a ti. Thank you. For $5 super sticker. First into the super sticker.
Big shout out.
I first said Eugenio. This is some weeks ago. And Kim corrected me.
Yeah.
She said, I think it is Eugenio.
That's right.
And
I stand corrected.
Yeah, I was impressed that she corrected me, and I took that correction. You know, I do take notes and take criticism to heart and try to adjust accordingly.
The Giants had a player with the same first name years, like over 10 years ago. They pronounce it Eugenio.
Oh, my. There's a third way to say it.
Eugenio.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, it's very rare that I get the chance to correct you. So any opportunity to correct you is taken with pride and glee.
Yeah.
Girl, you just woo.
I'm loving it. Well, all of you can correct me anytime. You are welcome to. We get plenty of criticism and static and everything in the chat, and you are welcome to join live, or you're welcome to leave comments after the fact. In fact, one of the criticisms that I got about the mocking of John Rothman, that came in after the fact, like after regular trading, after hours trading. So I'll share that with you in a little bit. Micro Kimmy says, I think you should have Stephen Spoonamore on. Well, yesterday, Micro Kimmy, we had Stephen Spoonamore, at least a little bit from him, in a conversation related to the election. Stephen Spoonamore, for those who don't know, he is a tech specialist with theories about how the election might have been manipulated through essentially the involvement of Elon Musk, but he does kind of show receipts. At least he lays out the blueprint for what could happen. And in essence, in 15 seconds or less, in case you don't know it, it works like this, that knowing voter information, specific voter information, because of the Musk registration of voters that he did in swing states, you remember the whole $1 million thing, he could then look to see, this is, again, somewhat complicated, and I said it would be 15 seconds, and it's already not, but he could look to see the gap that needed to be made up. This all can be pre-programmed when I say look to see. And then he can add votes, what are called bullet ballots, where you only vote for top of ticket for one candidate, and then everything else on the ballot is left blank. And that, by the way, happened. And he suggests it happened with 30,000 ballots. And he's saying that that specific voter information is then matched with those bullet ballots, and there are no paper ballots to back that up. So that's a completely after the fact kind of way to fix it. So that's what that relates to, Stephen Spoonamore. But, it's interesting, just because you mentioned it, thank you for mentioning it. I got some email.
I've received a lot of positive letters
related to just that. And someone saying, because I like to, I said I'd take a meeting on, a conspiracy about the election. And I'd said I'm ready to entertain this, but I'm not ready yet to sign on to it. And I got this note from Robert. He says, Mark, I was an internet software engineer for Cisco. And recently, I was a vote center lead in Santa Clara. That's in the southern part of the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. Let me first preface this by saying that I hate Trump and wish his lifestyle would have caught up with him by now. Mm-hmm. But there is no chance Musk could have used Starlink to adjust the vote, says Robert. To me, this election tells me the nation's critical thinking skills are in the toilet. If Trump cheated, he says, Starlink was not how it happened. So, again, internet software engineer who worked at Cisco Systems and worked at a vote center as a lead in Santa Clara, someone like that I give some cred to. So, even as we run out the, oh my God, Starlink, they changed all the votes, it was done like this, I want you to at least hear that part of it as well. So, and as long as I'm on it, I want to quickly acknowledge a new Patreon subscriber, Loretta. Big shout out.
Big shout out.
Yeah. Jumped on as a Patreon supporter. It really is how we keep this show on the air. So if you get any value from this show and want to see it continue into the new year, please consider joining the crew that is on Patreon or PayPal. There are links to both of them underneath all our videos. It's really the way we make payroll. We're like an NPR PBS model. So it's that, if you want to see this show continue, please consider a monthly contribution. And so that's something we wanted to celebrate. Also, Linda just edited her membership from $5 a month to $10 a month.
Big shout out.
Big shout out to Linda. I love it. Yeah, right on. So thank you, everybody who stepped up and is part of the Patreon community. Very, very cool to have the community that we have, and we hope to continue to expand it so that we can do more and stick around.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, it's not a hobby. We try to, these are real jobs that require real work, and so for that matter, at some point, you got to make money doing it. I also got this in the mailbag, and this, I'm afraid, is, it's not
I've received a lot of positive letters.
It's not such a, it's sort of positive. Hello, Mark, and all of the Mark Thompson Show crew. I've been a regular follower of the show since the KGO days. We started on a talk radio station called KGO that went away. And I was also an early Patreon supporter. So this is someone who's really on board. I've enjoyed the format that combines hard news and political commentary mixed with a variety of recurring segments, both heavy and light, all delivered with a healthy dose of irreverence, silliness, and self-deprecation. That would be a ding word, I think. Certainly sounds very highfalutin. And highfalutin would be a ding word. This show has helped me through COVID, he says. Oh. The turmoil of the election, and recently an enormous, if you can hear there's some kind of, they're blowing, yeah, it's like I think it's one of the landscape blowers here on the great, the studio expanse that is here in the garden. Anyway, the show has helped me through COVID, the turmoil of the election, and recently a major neck surgery. While I understand the importance of covering the effects of the election, the amount of the show dedicated to politics has taken me to the point of burnout and overwhelmingness.
What?
Oh, no.
Yes. I'm hoping as we go forward, there will be a return to a bit more of a diverse format. Thank you for all you do. Steve. Well, he's right, as And look at Steve with all of our merch. All right. So this really puts me in a very tough position, and here's why. I mean, he has essentially everything. Go to that picture again, because I don't typically see people with the rehydration device, which a lot of people call a water bottle. The tote bag, which to me is one of the great creations that came out of our merch store. And our merch store is getting a huge upgrade that starts tomorrow, I think. So we'll have Courtney's going to come on and talk about it. And this is a guy, in other words, who has committed to a lot of our merch, and he's a Patreon subscriber, and he's just getting over neck surgery. So there's a lot here, and he's got a smile after all of that. That makes me quite sympathetic to Steve. And so it is, and he's right. We have done more politics as we've kind of reached the culmination of the political discourse with the election and the election results now with cabinet choices being somewhat controversial and a controversial agenda into a new Trump term, and a victory on the part of Trump that included the popular vote. We've talked more about it, and it has bumped out a lot of the other stuff that we might talk about. That will reach a kind of equilibrium in the new year. I think we will begin to get into things that are sort of not necessarily Trump-related, but right now we are still kind of working all of that stuff out, and meaning that there are a lot of issues that are front and center that are related to government and the federal government, and Trump and his people will be in charge of the government and are already looking to create a new agenda and a new kind of government, and that demands some focus. So I definitely think we'll reach the equilibrium, but I want to apologize to Steve for today, because we will likely, I think, do a lot of, but we have some other stuff on the show besides Trump stuff today. Of course, as I mentioned, Wednesdays bring Rothman, so we'll get into a little bit of Trump talk. But then after that, in the second hour, Belinda Weymouth is here with It's the Planet Stupid. There's big stuff happening in the environment. It's not necessarily related to Washington, D.C. and the federal government and Donald Trump. There's also another Stephen who has contacted us. He has our merch, and he's taking it all across Asia. And I believe his latest offering is from Macau. Isn't that where he is, Albert?
Yeah, Stephen, he's got some Mark merch across the world. Check it out.
Wow, I think that's impressive.
A major announcement.
I don't know if it's a major announcement,
Mark
but
merch in Macau.
I'm sure they haven't seen it before. I mean,
I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for the beanie is a popular piece of merch, and thank you, Stephen, for repping the beanie in Asia. So, the U.S. is closing its Kyiv embassy, warning of a significant air attack. This unusual alert coming a day after Ukraine has used American-made ballistic missiles to strike the Russian territories for the first time. As you know, there were certain restrictions on those missiles prior to this time. Biden has released those restrictions, and so now those missiles can be used to fire into Russia. The closing of the Kyiv embassy and the warning of a significant air attack is significant indeed. There is also word of this, and this is, again, not related necessarily to Trump, so Steve, who wrote to us, may be happy, but the news isn't necessarily happy about giraffes. I got this news.
What?
I know. I'm on the giraffe thread that I get every day, updates on giraffes, and they are about to join the endangered species list. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service proposing that 3 populations of the world's tallest land animal be classified as endangered. In the savannas of Africa, the populations have plummeted, so much so that the U.S. government is moving to add many of these long-necked mammals to its official list of imperiled species. U.S. Fish and Wildlife announcing a proposal to protect a wide swath of giraffes under the Endangered Species Act. It's the first time the animal would receive protection under that law. And now let me break my promise to Steve, because one of the first agenda items of the last Trump administration was to get rid of the Endangered Species Act. As you know, his sons are hunters. They like to hunt endangered animals and endangered creatures. If you don't believe me, Google it, look it up,
Google it.
and you can see for yourself that that's the case. But giraffes now added to that list of endangered species. So as we
The Mark Thompson Show.
as we look around what's happening in the world, we do occasionally visit the world of Trump. I'll talk about it in detail with a sense of strategy, where the Democrats are. I'll just talk about also the Democratic Party with John Rothman, who joins us in the second half of this first hour. But right now, because it is an odd situation that Donald Trump finds himself in, with apologies to Steve, who wrote the letter saying that the politics on the show is overwhelming, maybe too much politics. I'm sorry, Steve. I have to offer this humble apology.
Would you like to apologize for what you've done?
Not for what I've done, but what I'm going to do. This is a chunk of Trump.
Open wide.
Ready?
Here comes your chunk of Trump.
It's my favorite food.
With your first bite, here's Mark Thompson.
I have a feeling it's going to be beautiful.
It is a very, very rough day for Republicans in Washington. Why? They're going to be in charge of everything. But Donald Trump is angry. Republicans were no-shows for these judicial appointment confirmations, and those no-shows, just not being there, have helped Democrats in judicial nominations getting through. These judicial nominees are moving through despite Trump's wishes to vanquish the Democrats at every turn. And Republicans are angry at Marco Rubio and JD Vance, along with others, for being absent from the chamber of the Senate, which allowed Senate Democrats to ram through key Biden judicial nominees.
And they're still doing it. The Republicans are trying to use procedural movements to slow this down, but Democrats are like, nope, we've got 44, and we are going to try to get them all seated.
So with J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio out of the chamber, now they're scurrying back to the chamber today because Daddy Trump is saying, hey, get back there. You know, we've got an agenda, and you guys are asleep at the wheel. Of course, Kim will tell you where they were. Why weren't they in the chamber, Kim?
They were in various places. I know J.D. Vance was at the side of President-elect Trump trying to pick a new FBI director.
Thank you. They were not there in Washington because Trump had asked them, at least J.D. Vance, to be with him. So apparently, the Wall Street Journal angry at all the Republicans for handing the Democrats a lame duck victory. They wrote that the confirmation of this appellate court nominee is now going to allow that appellate court nominee to enjoy a lifetime appointment to the federal bench because Republicans couldn't get their full team on the field. So that is something that Trump is very angry about, and yet he will obviously have control of nominations and control of the confirmation process once he ascends into the presidency. More important, once he's there in Washington nominating to a GOP-controlled Senate. Meantime, stand by. I'm into my Trump, my chunk of Trump list of nominations.
Oh.
His latest, it's tough to keep up with it.
Up. Yep.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Oz has been nominated.
Thanks, Oprah.
Yeah, that is...
What?
Yeah. Dr. Oz, a former television talk show host, heart surgeon, he's not nobody. When I look at him in the panoply of crap that is being thrown toward nominations in Washington, I have to basically say, well, he's a doctor. I don't know.
Yeah, a doctor who sells snake oil.
Well, he has tried to pitch a couple of, things that will maybe cures that maybe not measure up to, the scientific method in terms of rigorous evaluation. But It is said that Dr. Oz will be a leader in incentivizing disease prevention so we get the best results in the world for every dollar we spend on healthcare in our great country. Those are the words of Donald Trump. He will also cut waste and fraud within our country's most expensive government agency, which is a third of our nation's healthcare spend and a quarter of our entire national budget. If they really let him go after that, it would mean that you'd get, I think, some huge reductions in Medicare. You'd have to. I mean, I don't see any other way to, and I think that that's kind of code for that. That's Dr. Oz, who is now into the mix. But it is not just Dr. Oz. There is a new NATO ambassador. And this new NATO ambassador, Matthew Whitaker, I don't really know much about Matthew Whitaker, but Kim does. Kim, tell us about Matthew Whitaker.
I was reading a little bit about Matthew Whitaker today, and he is apparently not a guy who has a lot of government experience, but he was at the helm of World Patent Marketing. This is a company that was fined $26 million a few years ago, being accused of bilking customers out of millions of dollars based on phony promises. So here's a little bit of what World Patent Marketing is known for. They tried to sell people theoretical time travel commodities tied to the price of Bitcoin. That sounds dubious. They tried to sell folks a masculine toilet. It's built for well-endowed men.
Wow.
Yeah, his special potty. And they also tried to hawk a Sasquatch doll whose promotional video asserted to have DNA evidence that Bigfoot is real.
Wow.
Oh, my God.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is that when it comes to NATO and now beginning to take the world stage, maybe he has a whole new market for many of those things to which you've referred.
Yeah, now he's going to take the Bigfoot and the well-endowed toilet to the world.
Yes, and maybe that's what America will become, my friends. A little bit more of the marketing the American lifestyle, which is the special toilet and the new word about Bigfoot being real. Meantime,
like the qualifications. It seems like the qualifications for Trump's cabinet picks are one of three things: either you're a sex offender, you have some crazy stuff you're trying to sell that makes absolutely no sense in the world, or you're a TV personality.
Well,
don't talk to me that way.
I, again, can tell, Kim, you're not a fan, but that's one way to look at it. Maybe these people are the outsiders with the refreshing new look at government that we need. Now, let's get on to Linda McMahon. She is his pick for education secretary. As you know, the Department of Education was earmarked in at least talks during the lead up to the election. It was being talked about as a government agency that would likely be eliminated. So I don't know if that's still on the agenda, but Linda McMahon is his pick for education secretary. She is, and this is the other thing, I thought Kim was going to mention this because this is typically the way it goes. Donors, wealthy donors, are oftentimes given positions in government. Now, usually, wealthy donors are given ambassadorships. The true neophyte ambassadorships that go to wealthy donors are, to countries where they're not necessarily going to be in the heart of the action. It's sort of a ceremonial-ish post, but that's not the case for the Trump administration. Linda McMahon, wealthy owner, shown here with, I believe, her ex-husband. Are they still together? I think that they've broken up, Albert, but you can
Google it.
Okay, check it out.
I'll probably have to confirm that, but yes.
Okay, but anyway, she is actually going to, having put a lot of money into the Trump campaign and been a big supporter, she's going to be given this education secretary post, and she'll be a big part of his cabinet. And in a statement, he said, as Secretary of Education, Linda will fight tirelessly to expand, quote, choice to every state in America and empower parents to make the best education decisions for their families. That's Linda McMahon. Now, meantime, Donald Trump is looking for the new FBI director. Yeah, still hasn't quite settled on anyone, but now I get word that Kash Patel is in contention to be named FBI director. Again, this is all as a result of both a search and then interviews. Trump has to sit down the same way he did with James Comey and establish loyalty and that everybody's on the same page. He is keeping Kash Patel in the running to be the next FBI director, according to two people who are familiar with this matter. And he conducted interviews, did Trump, with Kash Patel and other candidates at Mar-a-Lago on Monday night. The existence of the interviews made public in a post from JD Vance, who was then smacked down and told, get that post off, and now it's been deleted, apparently revealed that there is a photo finish underway for FBI director. Trump has a special interest in the FBI, of course, because he fired James Comey, as I was just mentioning, in 2017, because Comey wouldn't close the investigation into possible collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. And then he talked about disloyalty from Christopher Wray, the FBI director, who succeeded Comey. So Patel's continued position as a top candidate for this spot makes clear that Trump wants a loyalist in key national security and law enforcement positions. And Patel has that. I think he passes that litmus test. He's frequently rallied against the deep state. He comes from some of the deepest kinds of loyalties that you've seen around Trump. That is to say, he's not just on the Trump bus now. He's been a stalwart loyalist for some time. And he's made inroads by repeatedly demonstrating over several years his loyalty and articulating plans to restructure the FBI, including dismantling the firewall between the White House and the FBI. One of the most respected aspects to American government is that the Justice Department and FBI, investigative agencies involved in law enforcement, have always had that firewall between the White House and those agencies. The wall may be going away. And finally, we'll get to Matt Gaetz, but I will wait on Matt Gaetz. Should I wait on him, Albert, or should I do a little something on him now and then have Brother Rothman opine on Matt Gaetz? I'll leave it to you, Albert.
Yeah, that sounds good. Bring it up and we'll have Rothman respond.
Okay. So let me round this out then with the deal on Matt Gaetz. Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee have asked the FBI to provide them the file on Attorney General nominee Matt Gaetz. Gaetz under investigation for sexual misconduct and illicit drug use until he resigned from the House a day before the Ethics Committee report was to be released. FBI Director Christopher Wray is being asked to provide the committee with the files so that the committee can fully, with their constitutional duty, vet Matt Gaetz for the country's highest law enforcement position. There's a picture of Matt Gaetz, obviously captured between frat parties. The grave public allegations against Mr. Gaetz speak directly to his fitness to serve as the chief law enforcement officer for the federal government, says the committee's letter. The unanswered questions regarding Mr. Gaetz's alleged conduct are particularly significant given that his associate, Joel Greenberg, we've talked about him on the show before, he's now serving time, pleaded guilty to the sex trafficking charge for which Gaetz was also investigated. The House Ethics Committee is meeting today to discuss whether to release its report on Gaetz, despite the fact that House Speaker Mike Johnson wants to bury it. Now, there's one thing I want... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just some new information about this. There's the chair of the ethics panel has now just said he's got some reservations about releasing this report on Gaetz because it's not done yet.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Got to be finished for us to see it. See.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand it was really a rush job. It's taken them, 6 years to put the report together. So, yeah, I can understand that they might need a little more time. Now, I wanted to show you the one thing that you can add to the pile of other things, in addition to witness accounts, regarding Matt Gaetz and the paying and trafficking, potentially, this underage girl. Now, by the way, this, to be fair to Gaetz, and I really do want to be fair to Gaetz and just fair to the conversation. These payments that are shown here, payments, again, it's been redacted to whom those payments actually went. They are for amounts between $300 and $600, and I'm not sure, and we can't be sure that they went to an underage girl. So that may be not fair to Gaetz. I want to make it clear. She may be of age. If you'll note the Venmo notes, which are just one column over from the right, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see $300 car deductible, $200 gift, $417 reimbursement, $300 love you, $650 travel,
Love you too.
$250 high, just HI, and $420 joy, exclamation mark. So you begin to see, I don't know exactly what's going on here, but love you, high, and joy added up to over $1,000, and the entire thing added up to over $4,000 just earmarked to that one person. But it continues. If you look at the notes on this second page, there is $250 for being my friend, $400 for being awesome, $500 here is the only note, $500 again, reimbursement, $200 just because. And then the ones I'm not reading, they're just emojis. There's a gift emoji, there's a, and then $400 flight plus extra for you. So when you look at those all add up to over $6,000 to that person. You begin to see that there might have been something going on. Again, this establishes a pattern. It doesn't, and I stress this one more time, although I just did mention it, it doesn't mean something illegal is going on, because look, you're allowed to send money to some woman to get her to meet you in New York, to go to a Broadway show, whatever, reimburse her for expenses. I mean, honestly, I understand he may be married or whatever the story is, but I don't know the situation. It doesn't actually break any kind of legal restrictions, any of this stuff. It does, however, establish that there might have been things going on that sort of match witness accounts and some of these other things that are likely in that ethics committee report, which will be leaked. I think already there's a sign that there are hackers who've gotten into it, and that's how we know a lot of this information. That's the word on Matt Gaetz. And again, the House Ethics Committee is meeting today to discuss the release of that report. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know you're thinking it. Matt Gaetz was having a lot more fun than you were. I know. Well, I mean,
you have never Venmo'd me, not even once, to say you are awesome or thanks for being a friend. I don't think I've ever received a Venmo entry for that.
I will say this: Matt Gaetz continues to be completely 100% supported by Donald Trump. And I say that because Trump has been repeatedly asked, are you still with him? Is he still your guy, despite the fact that he's so controversial? And Trump has said, yeah, he's my guy. And as I told you yesterday, I think Trump may get the lion's share of these nominees through, maybe even Matt Gaetz. That's your chunk of Trump.
That's it for this edition.
Well, I really enjoyed it.
But make sure to join us again next time
I think you might want to listen. There's nothing wrong with listening.
for another chunk of Trump.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Right on. Thanks for being here. It is a Wednesday, and Wednesdays bring in all kinds of magical people to our universe. Belinda Weymouth is coming up in the second hour with It's the Planet Stupid, news of the environment, news of the planet. She's got some very interesting stories. I've got some interesting stories to add to that mix, so we've got Our Cup Runneth Over. And Luis, was that who Luis? I just saw it quickly up there, a super chat. So I guess KGO for gambling degenerates wasn't a good bet. Sayonara, sucker. linebackers. Yeah, they now have moved KGO. We come out of this radio station, KGO, so you'll see our OGs, some of them referring to KGO. And KGO went away, and then they started with a gambling station, and now that gambling station has been now itself gone away, went to a small 5,000-watt channel that's further down the dial, and they took the right-wing talk that was going on there, and they moved that to KGO. Now, they brought KGO back as a right-wing syndicated radio station. They run Hannity, they run Mark Levin, that kind of thing. So that's what people are referring to.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I don't want to delay anymore. Wednesdays, bring him into our mix. He is a presidential and political historian and our former colleague at KGO. How about it for John Rothman?
Hi, Mark.
Hello, sir. John with his own podcast, Around the Political World with John Rothman. And what have you been concentrating on that podcast, John?
We've covered Donald Trump extensively. We've covered Project 2025 because two key nominees that Trump is putting in place are part of that, which he denied was going to happen. We've talked about what's happening in education. I don't know if you have the story, but the superintendent of schools in Oklahoma, fellow named Ryan Walters, a Republican, announced that everybody has to pray now, and they're going to have Bible lessons, and that's being followed by Texas.
Yeah, Texas is doing the same thing, right?
I mean, it's.
What's the matter, John? You don't think a little prayer right now is appropriate for the schools? Is that what you're telling me?
I want you to know, every time I agree to appear with you, I say a silent prayer so that I will know that I'm okay. I did the same thing all the way through school, particularly at finals. But
if it's a
government, wait. Did you buy a Donald Trump Bible?
I have not purchased them. I don't know.
You're selling merchandise, for God's sake. Why don't you pick up the Donald Trump
Well, we'll
Bible?
remind everybody that the state of Oklahoma, to which John has referred, actually has purchased $3 million worth of those Bibles because it was basically a gift to Donald Trump. They wanted Bibles that had both the Bible and the Declaration of Independence included. So that was like the stipulation for them to buy it. And the only Bible that has such a thing is the Trump Bible made in China.
It's just unbelievable.
Now, look, I'm not a Trump fan. I'm sorry. That's an expressed bias on my part, so I don't mean to always dump on Trump. But it is weird how people who are in official positions, like in Oklahoma, they have created ways, essentially, to curry favor with the president-elect. So let me go back to this situation, though, with religion in the schools, because it's an important distinction, I think, that need be made, and that is that government schools, right, schools with government funding, the implication on your part, I think, is there shouldn't be prayer in those schools, correct?
Exactly, 100%.
So parochial education
doesn't matter. Parochial schools, private school, they can do whatever they want.
Sure. So this is something that, as you say, is something of a contagion in those states, Oklahoma, Texas. Do you see challenges as viable in any way? I mean, there will be court challenges to this.
There certainly should be, and it depends who nominates the judges. As you pointed out, the Trump people are furious because Biden has nominated judges. The Trump people want to pack the courts. And you will recall we talked about the fact that we did not just vote for a president, we voted for the appellate courts, the Supreme Court, the federal courts. All of those courts are now going to be affected profoundly.
Do you see the constellation of people that will inhabit this new administration as we've seen these nominees be revealed through the days? I mean, it's almost like it feels like a reality show, the way one is shocking, the other is completely unexpected. Do you see, as I do, that he'll get the lion's share of these nominations through?
I think if they go to recess appointments, which they may well do, there is no Senate confirmation. I would remind you, John Bolton, who was a frequent guest on KGO, was ambassador to the UN, but was a recess appointment because he couldn't muster the votes in the Senate. So my expectation is, and Donald Trump talked about this early on, before the election, that he would rely on recess appointments. And that clued me off, and frankly, I find it unconscionable. The idea that members of the Senate would agree to recess appointments, abdicating their responsibility for advise and consent, is very disturbing.
Isn't it the case, though, John, that he would likely get these through even with a Senate majority?
I don't know. We don't know what the Republicans are going to do. Now, the Republicans in the Senate are asking for the report on Matt Gaetz, the Speaker of the House, who has tremendous power, is saying, no, we don't want to release it. After all, he's not a member of Congress anymore. And once you cease to be a member of Congress, this kind of information shouldn't get out. Now they're using the excuse that it's not completed. I mean, Mark, it's the vetting process when you work in administration is absolutely critical. And we have had nominees for the cabinet rejected over the years for various reasons. But what is being proposed now is beyond the pale. I have to tell you, it's
now. Why do you say that?
Every sense of it.
It's beyond the pale. You're talking about the recess appointments. That's beyond the pale.
Yes.
It's not. Yeah. Okay. Like the guy's
and
allowed
I would
to
say much of what he's doing, had he revealed Matt Gaetz as Attorney General, if he had revealed Robert Kennedy Jr. as the head of Health and Human Services.
Well, just to, again, I don't mean to always push back on Brother Rothman, but just to kind of represent the argument, I think he doesn't mind it. I think he was clear. I mean, RFK Jr. campaigned with him, endorsed him.
No, you will recall that one of his key aides said RFK Jr. would not become Health and Human Services, and that man, who was the co-chair of the Transition Committee, is now going to be Secretary of Commerce.
That's right. So you see them up in front
of you. Not that I want
to
correct you. Let me assure you.
No. But there was some cognitive dissonance there because you're right. Lutnick on Fox News said RFK Jr. isn't going to be ahead of HHS. But Trump had made clear that he was going to put RFK Jr. in charge of making America healthy again, et cetera. He left it somewhat vague.
Health Czar is very different than the head of HHS.
Yeah, fair enough.
You understand, the staff there has to respond to whoever is in charge. I mean, this is, and by the way, how do you feel about fluoride being taken out of water? I mean,
I honestly, of all the things that he's proposed, doesn't even move the meter for me. I think that one of the great advances in American medicine and one of the great advances in human medicine through the generations has been the elevation of vaccines to the point that we've actually been able to more or less eliminate some deadly, horrifying illnesses.
Look what Robert Kennedy Jr. went to Samoa.
And the idea that you could...
Kennedy Jr. went to Samoa, advocated against the measles vaccine, and they had an outbreak of measles, which caused the death of a number of people.
Sure.
I mean, there is a cause and effect here.
Well, I mean, and rubella and all of these other horrible illness, polio, smallpox. These are all
Thank
things.
God for the polio vaccine. I'm old enough to remember when polio broke out and we couldn't go in swimming pools.
Sure.
And I remember when the Salk vaccine was created. And I remember the sugar cubes. I remember it all.
Yeah.
Thank God.
These diseases were a scourge, really, on humanity.
That's right. Absolutely, 100%.
So when you put fluoridation of water up against it, I think it is not. But again, I mean, I don't mind.
Talk to dentists. Have a few dentists on your program to talk about how our dental health has improved because of fluoride in the water. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you liked going to the dentist as a kid. I hated it.
Well, I will I will say this, and this is we'll move on from RFK Jr., but the thing that makes RFK Jr. problematic, to me anyway, as I look at him, is that some of what he says makes sense. Like the obesity problem in America is a substantial one.
Huey Long made statements that made sense. It didn't mean he should have been president of the United States. And there are leaders of other nations that we could mention, but we don't want to because it creates a whole different context, who did great things. Remember the trains ran on time? Come on. It's unbelievable to me.
It's against the backdrop of his controversies that this guy is ascending into a Trump administration and will likely be in charge of some very high-end medical strategies moving forward. I'm talking about the CDC, NIH. I mean, these are places where some breakthrough research.
And Tulsi Gabbard. Please don't forget Tulsi Gabbard. She will control 18 intelligence agencies. And
she,
may I say a word positively?
Please. Yeah.
Marco Rubio for Secretary of State makes great sense. He's very able. Elise Stefanik at the United Nations, again, a good pick. So what you have to do is to realize that advise and consent by the Senate, where there are real investigations and real hearings, are critical. And if those hearings are dispensed with, well, it presents an amazing problem. If you go to recess appointments, there are no hearings. It's just astounding.
The deportation of so many, I mean, he's talking about, let's just take the figure 10 million. I don't think it'll ever happen. As I've told you, I think I've told you, I've certainly told people who've watched the show, I think it'll be very high profile, heartbreaking, by the way, deportations that will be almost have a theater to them because they want those headlines out there, these mass deportations. But the reality is there isn't the infrastructure, there isn't the money to pay for the kind of mass deportations they're talking about. And
he's
now,
using the military. He's announced he will use the military. Let me remind you, and I remind all of our listeners, most people have never heard the name Thomas Homan, Homan, with a Heritage Foundation, who is now going to be the czar of deportation, and who wrote that section of the 2025 report, which Donald Trump says he has nothing to do with. When you really dig into this and you read the 2025 report and you realize key people who wrote that report from the Heritage Foundation are now getting key roles in the administration, including Homan, well, this is something that scares the living bejeebers out of me. I want you to know what people who are of Hispanic descent, even who were born in this country, are being advised, carry your passport just in case. That's where we are.
According to Pew Research, unauthorized immigrants live in 6.3 million households. 70% of them are mixed status. That means they are U.S. citizens and immigrants residing in the country legally.
Absolutely.
And living in these various homes. Only 5% of mixed status households, unauthorized immigrants, lived with people who were not family, suggesting that most undocumented migrants live with a family member who is a U.S. citizen or legal resident. So there's talk, and now there is conflicting talk about it, that there would be U.S. citizens that would be related, family I'm talking about, deported alongside those who are in this country
illegally. That's speculation. The fact that you and I have to even discuss this at this point in the history of the United States of America is absolutely astounding, disturbing, horrifying. And I have no other words to describe it. Look, you can have nominees for a president's cabinet who you like and who you don't like. But when the president-elect of the United States talks about recess appointments, puts these kind of people in position of power, potentially, and the Republicans in the Senate are so intimidated by it that they may not do their job. And when you have the Speaker of the House, I mean, I have to tell you, in my worst nightmare scenario, I could not have imagined this.
It is true.
Am I being blunt enough?
No. Could you crank it up? You got it about 8. I think 10 would be useful. I do think that the economic impact of deporting all these people is so immense. And the business community, I noticed this, I noted this yesterday or the day before, and I've noted it along the way for years, of course, that the underlying aspects of the American economy depend so much on many of these people who don't have legal status here. I mean, the agricultural concerns alone in the Central Valley are essentially completely dependent on that workforce. There will be pushback, and that's why I say you're going to see a lot of deportations, hundreds of thousands, and it's going to happen
And you're going
quickly.
to see the military used for that purpose, which Donald Trump pledged to do, and which I would remind you, General Milley, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said he wouldn't allow it. By the way, we didn't even talk about Pete Hegseth, who is the Secretary of Defense designate.
I
watched him on Fox. I've watched him for years. Come on, give me a break. Secretary of Defense. You know, I remember when John F. Kennedy took Bob McNamara out of Ford Motor Company. But Bob McNamara had experience. He had depth, and he may have been a Republican, but everybody acknowledged he was brilliant.
Yeah. That was sort of the part of that best and the brightest. McNamara in that Halberstam book was talked about that way. Hegseth, I don't know. He's certainly quite controversial. He's a true neophyte. You have to run the Pentagon, which is an organization of immense proportion. The Department of Defense, 2 million plus employees. So you have to have some managerial experience, which he does not have. I, again, think that Trump will get that appointment through for some of the reasons to which you've referred. I think he has cowed the senators to the point that they're ready to play ball.
Appalling. By the way, you're going to talk in the next hour about the environment. Look, Lee Zeldin, former congressman, defeated for governor of New York, has been nominated to be Environmental Protection Agency head. He's opposed to environmental protection, for God's sake.
That's absolutely true. I mean, that's an appointment that's designed to continue a Trump strategy of dismantling some of these government agencies like the EPA. He may do some
Department of Education
and the Department of Education. On the deportation, I'm seeing in the chat. Do you think there should be? Well, let me just see. We've got Rothman offers no alternative plan that would deport anyone, not even 1 in 100.
You're right. And the reason is because the President of the United States has the power to nominate for cabinet offices. Let me remind you that when you put a Stephen Miller in as Deputy Chief of Staff of Policy, that's not requiring Senate confirmation. That is simply an appointment the president can make to his own staff. So look, it's not, I don't want to be negative. I mean, I was not for Donald Trump. I have real concerns about Donald Trump, but I want to know from the Trump supporters out there, do you think these are creditable nominees? Some of the names we've mentioned? Do you understand what the implications are? And I think that is the key. And the tragedy here is, as somebody who believes in the integrity of the United States Senate, you see the Republicans rolling over. It's beyond my comprehension.
Yeah, I don't have the faith in any of these institutions that you do. We've visited that a few times, Linger. What's Rothman's plan regarding the millions who are here illegally? Can't deport all of them, obviously, but we need to do something. And let me just tag this, and then I'll let you speak. It is true that Trump probably won this election on that issue in a big, big way. He won it on illegal immigration. So something had to be done, and he is now following through with this. Again, he's representing it and advertising it as this intense upgrade to the existing immigration policy. What would be an appropriate policy is kind of what Randy's asking you, John Rothman. You can't deport all of them, he says,
rounding up illegals. Yeah. There's no problem with rounding up illegals and deporting them. We're talking about millions of people. We're talking about establishing, and this is seriously being suggested, transit camps on the Mexican border on the Texas side. We're talking about a complete disruption of the way this country operates. Now, you asked me what my alternative is. My alternative was not to vote for Donald Trump. Pure and simple. Sure. But he's now the president, and he has to be dealt with.
What would be just to follow up then, what would be, well, John's essentially saying, I have no problem with rounding up illegals. I would imagine that when you say that, I'll get to this, Peter, comment in a second. When you say that, I presume you mean the rounding up associated with those who have run afoul of the law? I mean, where do you say rounding up? What does that mean?
We should be doing that. But that's not what Donald Trump is talking about.
I get it, but I'm just trying to answer the viewer's question, which is, and what would your plan be, or what would a plan that you might endorse be?
I would have followed the plan of the Obama and Biden administrations. If you are here illegally, you should be removed. Period. I have no problem with that. Nobody has. Do you remember the president?
So let me just follow up on.
Do you remember the president who was called the deporter in chief? It was Barack Obama, for God's sake.
So you'd have no problem with going into the lettuce fields and rounding all those people up in the strawberry fields?
You just made something very interesting. A criminal who commits murders or rapes, but the people who work in this country, who are here illegally, let me remind you, Dwight Eisenhower had a program called the Bracero program, which worked quite well, where people who were here illegally but wanted to work here, registered, and it was fine. And I would even remind you, Ronald Reagan had a similar program here in California. There are ways of doing this. It means that people who are here illegally, who violated the law, may be able to stay and work. But it also means that there's no excuse for a murderer or a rapist. But do you remember what Donald Trump said? That nations were releasing from their prisons massive numbers of people who were committing crimes. Where are they, for God's sake? There aren't massive numbers. There are individuals.
It's draconian is your point. All right. So Peter says John Mark Miller, the chief of staff, said that if you are housing an illegal alien, you can also be prosecuted for aiding and abetting an illegal immigrant because now they are criminals. Again, this is the extension of the Trump policy. Yeah, it's true. And this kind of goes into the.
Do you remember what Miller said? America for Americans.
Yeah,
that's what he said.
The situation beyond this administration just got far more intense in Ukraine. I wonder if you could give me a moment on that, John, because the reality of what's happening with Russians being threatened by missiles fired from Ukraine has taken this conflict to a whole other level. And now, last thing, the Americans have closed the embassy in Kyiv, expecting some kind of Russian response that could be quite serious.
Remember, Ukraine is an independent nation now, so there is an embassy. In the old days, when I was there, it was a consulate because it was still part of the Soviet Union. Look, the Ukraine is escalating. Vladimir Putin has just revised the nuclear doctrine. It was announced yesterday, very publicly. Let me remind you that we are now permitting Ukraine to fire long-range missiles into Russian territory. He couldn't do it until we gave permission. On top of that, we're now providing landmines, which we are told are being used very carefully. Have you ever seen a landmine used carefully, for God's sake? This is an escalation. What worries me, and I was asked the question yesterday in another interview, I was asked the question, what are the dangers of nuclear war? Let me remind people, you can fight a limited nuclear war. You don't have to blow up the world. We know that from Hiroshima. You can hit directly with a low-grade, what we now call a low-grade nuclear weapon. It doesn't have to be a thermonuclear war. I'm not worried about San Francisco or Los Angeles being bombed, but I'll tell you what they are worried about in Europe. I was just there a few months ago. In Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, in Poland. And let me tell you who's very worried. The Russians are worried because they understand there will be tit for tat. And the Germans are worried. In fact, the Germans are stepping up their aid to Ukraine. But without the United States, Ukraine cannot win. Zelensky knows that. Not that we can win, but now let me remind you of the most important thing of all. Donald Trump has said he has a plan. I want to know what his plan is. And do you remember he said he might be able to implement it even before he took office? Well, if ever there was a time for Donald Trump to pull a rabbit out of the hat, this is it.
Well,
Zelensky
it was just that.
I mean, Ukrainians are absolutely horrified.
That was propaganda, as we all know. There's no way that he can.
No, it was a statement. You may call it propaganda, but it was a statement which he ought to be held accountable for, given the escalation of tensions.
I have in my last minute with Rothman, there was something else from a listener. Phineas says, Mark, talk to Rothman about Gaza and Lebanon and anti-Semitism in Europe and the USA. Well, there's a lot there. But
I can't do that in a minute, Mark. But everybody should know that the Trump administration position is slightly different than the Biden administration. Governor Huckabee is now going to be the ambassador of the United States to Israel. He is more sympathetic to the Likud and to Netanyahu. No question about it. And so there is a change, and there is talk now, just talk, of Israel being given the green light to annex settlements in the West Bank. In return, the areas not annexed could constitute a Palestinian state. But there is real opposition to that by the Israelis, not because they're opposed to the Palestinians having something, but because if a Palestinian state is created, it might be run by Hamas. They would win an election. That's why Mahmoud Abbas has not held an election in years. So the Israelis are asking, look what happened in Gaza. We have an area of the West Bank, but you know from that narrowest point, it's only 9 miles from the Mediterranean Sea to what would be a Palestinian state. Look, I know people who jog 9 miles every day. Let me assure you, I'm not one of them. But I say this to you because American policy is going to change dramatically. There is also, if I may observe, a change in terms of the relationship between Jews in America and Jews in Israel. About 75% of Jews in America voted for Kamala Harris. But if Jews in Israel had voted in the American election, if they were American citizens, there's no doubt that about 70% would have voted for Donald Trump because they view Donald Trump as more friendly to Israel's interests. So this is a highly complex, difficult position. And let me tell you something. If, in fact, these major changes take place, there will be a great debate in the Jewish community in the United States. I spoke recently at a synagogue, and I suggested to the rabbi, who is very much in favor of a two-state solution, that even Israelis are not in favor of a two-state solution now because they're afraid of Hamas. Now, is there a chance for a deal with Lebanon? The answer is yes, and let me explain why. Because it does not involve creating a Palestinian state. It does not involve the Palestinian Authority, which has proved to be useless. But with Lebanon, remember, Lebanon as a country is very loosely formed, and that Hezbollah has tremendous power. And the Christians in Lebanon would rather see the Israelis in charge of stopping Hezbollah. So we'll see whether or not a deal can come.
What about the anti-Semitism in Europe and in this country, John?
Huh?
What about the rise of anti-Semitism in Europe and in this country?
It's horrific. It's horrific. There was a pogrom in Amsterdam, for God's sake. I was in Amsterdam just a few months ago. My cousins who live in France have taken the yarmulkes off their head, the Stars of David from around their neck. They are absolutely terrified. And in this country, you know that the Diary of Anne Frank was done in Detroit. And the neo-Nazis, and I hate to say it, radical Islamists, were out protesting the showing in a play of the Diary of Anne Frank. And I don't have to quote myself on this. Look what the king said. The king, after the pogrom in Amsterdam, said, "We failed the Jews before the Holocaust, and we have failed them again." Now, that is not a Jew speaking. That's the king of a sovereign country. So Jews are very concerned. And if you will take note, around synagogues, around the country, if you listen to the sermons delivered during the high holidays, virtually every rabbi spoke about the rise of Jew hatred. I say this with some regret, but I think it is something we have to grapple with. And it is a deep and abiding concern.
Well, on that rather a down note, we will have to wrap this conversation. However,
I want to know what the criticism was of you.
I will share with you. Let me finish. If you'll let me finish.
I hate letting you finish. Go ahead. You think it was your show, Mark?
When you left last time, I did my Rothman impression. You know, I've been doing it for years. You've heard it, and you're like family, and I know you get a kick out of it. And I was called out for it by Kathy in Campbell. Campbell is near the Bay Area. And she says, I think that's disrespectful that you mock John Rothman in this way. I'm not mocking John. It's an impression of John. You know how he speaks with that? He has that way. I always say, I love what John Rothman says. I don't always understand it, but I love the way he says it. And it's just a thing that I do. So I mean, for anyone who would take it, I think just Kathy, but
I'm not offended at all.
Yeah.
I do want everybody to know Mark and I are good friends. It doesn't mean we agree on everything. And that's the dynamic of the show. And as for impersonations, when I was in high school, Mark, my nickname was Mighty Mouth. So all I can tell you is, my dear friend Mike Wise did a column, Mighty Mouth. So I'm not offended at all. In fact, you should hear when I get my friends together, some of the impressions they do of my stentorian tone.
Yes, that's exactly it, a stentorian tone. John, look forward to your next podcast, which is a daily offering around the political world.
I am going to be away for 10 days, so there will be no podcast. And Mark, with deep regret, profound apologies, You'll have to find another way to fill this time next
All right.
Wednesday.
Next Wednesday, we'll
Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I'll be back the week after.
I look forward to that. You too, my friend. John Rothman, everybody. Thanks, John.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I am so excited that you've all joined us today. We are not nearly through. We've got a lot to get to. I will this hour get into what's going on in the environment. Also, I know that there are a few of you looking in who don't necessarily find yourselves supporters of Kamala Harris. And I think it worth noting that campaign, and I thought they did a lot of things really well, and I thought she did as well as she could do. I felt she wasn't the best pick as a candidate. You know, I've always said that. It's not just a new position after the fact that she lost. But I think some of the decisions they made, and I've made these points along the way, were poor. And as we now, I mean, I'll give you one example, which is the television buy. You know, they let Trump and the Trump PACs buy up all of those sports avails on huge football events, and that reaches everybody because there's nothing like NFL to reach all of America. And there wasn't a Kamala spot that answered for the social wedge issue, you know, the trans stuff, the illegal immigration. These things needed to be answered in a spot. And I thought the spot could have easily knocked down some of these things, but the spot buy didn't even happen. So anyway, I mention it because those are a couple of strategic, I thought, errors along the way. Maybe it wouldn't have mattered. Seems as though America was ready to vote this guy in. They were really not holding him, the media, to the same standard they were holding her. They wanted many more specifics from Kamala Harris about economic policy, let's say, than they were wanting from Donald Trump. All of that said, we will x-ray a bit where all that money went. She had all of that money. And where did her campaign spend that money? I will talk about that in the minutes to come. And then, as I say, we will get into the environment as well. I am noting in the chat that there are still those who believe that this election was stolen, that the election results were manipulated. As you know, I feel that I take a meeting on manipulation to the point that I do think a paper ballot recount makes sense in certain swing states. That said, today is the deadline for that, and it doesn't look as though it's going to happen. And as I've also mentioned to you, talked about it yesterday, you need Kamala Harris to ask for that. If Kamala Harris doesn't ask for the recount, not going to happen. So
today is the deadline in some states, right? Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So I would say, hey, if this guy and the rise of despotism and fascism is such a big threat, you told me, you know, how bad he is, I would think you might want to at least ask for a recount. Now, you might say, well, who pays for the recount? And this is a question that we kicked around. It is a state-by-state thing, so you would actually have to have the state pay for it, but raising the money for a recount is easy. It might be $10 million that you need. So not hard, and there's already money that's been raised for it, so it could be done. It's not money that's the impediment. It's the request from the Kamala Harris people. It hasn't come, and it doesn't appear that it will come. So Luis says, damn it, Mark, Kamala is still asking me for $5. So here you go, Kamala. Sorry you lost. Now please go away, says Luis. Well,
good day, sir.
Actually, what's happened, just to Luis's question, is after the election, the lists, I think, this is from the Democrats, I think. You can check this, but I believe this is typically how it works. So the Democrats sell those lists. So the list that has you as a Democratic donor is sold to people who are fundraisers, and so now they're hitting you. It's not Kamala Harris.
I think it is. It's because the emails are still coming from the Harris HQ or the Democratic National Committee.
Oh, really?
Google it.
All right, let me.
Well,
let's see. All right.
They're not done asking yet.
Kamala Harris lists sold fundraiser.
While you
Yeah,
look
you go
that up,
ahead.
Micro Kimmy with a $2 super chat says, "You remind me of Art Bell from Coast to Coast AM."
Wow.
Really? I don't know.
Maybe my voice, you mean? Maybe? I think probably just that. I don't know.
I don't know.
I hope that's a good thing. And if it is, I could see the voice, Art Bell. Yeah, I could see it. The Democrats are sending persistent appeals to Harris supporters without expressly asking them to cover any potential debts, enticing would-be donors instead with other matters. The Republican president-elect's picks for the upcoming administration, a handful of pending congressional contests where ballots are still being tallied. The party is flooding Harris's lucrative email donor list with near-daily appeals aimed at small dollar donors, those whose contributions are measured in the hundreds of dollars or less. But the post-election effort also includes individual calls to larger donors. The scramble, they say, now underscores the expense involved in a losing effort and the immediate challenges facing Democrats as they try to maintain a baseline political operation to counter the Trump administration and prepare for the 2026 midterm elections. So
they still have their hand out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, I don't see it. I thought that some of that was really a turning over of some of that fundraising to other fundraisers. The amount that they are coming up short on, according to those who are close to the fundraising effort, say that the expected shortfall is a relatively small sum compared to the breadth of the campaign, which reported having $119 million cash on hand in mid-October before the November 5th election. So anyway, I'm going to look more into this, but I do believe I'm not letting go of the idea that not all those appeals come from Harris. Maybe you should look to see, as Kim has, that they are coming from the DNC or state Democratic parties. I mean, where you are getting this solicitation, you should see some reference to exactly where the money's going, right?
So this is the first election that I've decided to put my money where my mouth is, and it's the first time I've donated to a campaign. And so once you donate to whatever campaign, then the floodgates are open and the emails keep coming. So I can look at where the emails are coming from, and they keep coming to me. So and it's the same address that, they've been coming through the entire election. So they have sold the list, and maybe others will come, but for right now, it's the Democratic National Committee and the Kamala Harris folks are still looking for donations.
Well, just because we're talking about money raised for an election now, I'll kind of get into it. I mean, this is big business. I mean, running for office is big business. It's not even Kamala Harris. Let's leave Kamala Harris and Tim Walz and those people who really have. I'll give them the credit for caring about these various philosophical positions they have, what government can do, all this sort of thing. I mean, again, that may or may not be true, but I'm not going to get into that now. But I'm just talking about the others associated with the campaign. And with any political campaign, there's so much big money associated with any kind of fundraising and any kind of campaign. So like the media advisors, with this immense amount of money poured into media in a presidential campaign, the media advisors make an immense amount of money. They get to skim, I mean, it's legal. They are paid based on those media buys. That's why they buy legacy media, because it's more expensive. So the more money you spend in legacy media, the more money that goes into the pockets of these media advisors. For instance, in 2020, the guy who was one of Biden's top strategists, Mike Donilon's his name, reported on his personal financial disclosure form that his consultancy to the Biden campaign and the strategies earned $4.35 million in 2020 alone.
Wow.
So a lot of firms can net big commissions from the Harris campaign. Again, here you go. 4 companies, I can't quite see what that that is up on screen now.
Oh,
Harris Flight Fund. Kim,
Yeah.
heard the 3 things you need to know right now. That's the solicitation? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it from Kamala Harris headquarters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So back to what I was saying, that in a big media buy, I'm talking about a legacy media buy, a lot of television, radio, mostly television. That's kind of old school media buy, expensive, and hits a lot of people with broadcast. And then the digital buys and all these other things, and flyers and mailings and all the rest of it. But it's those big analog buys, the legacy media buys, that yield the big money. So check this out. Numerous firms could have netted big commissions from the Harris campaign. This is in the New York Times. 4 companies received at least $90 million in payments as of mid-October. Did you hear that? 4 companies received at least $90 million in payments, including one firm whose cumulative receipts from the Harris campaign approached $300 million. Those aren't media buy dollars. Those are monies that go to the firm for the various things they are doing. It's huge, huge commissions that these companies begin to pile up. On both sides. It's not party specific. In fact, they're media strategists who work both sides. A very tough campaign. I give the Harris people some credit for pulling it together fast. But in this $1.5 billion money raise in a 15-week presidential campaign, the Harris campaign couldn't overcome the messaging of the right. And the things that people cared about apparently were things that she wasn't talking about sufficiently. That's at least one narrative. As you know, I think people vote their gut a lot of the time, and I think people forget maybe what was going on with Trump in that first administration and the chaotic way in which everything was going down. So I'm, again, not a Trump fan. I think you're seeing a little bit of the madness that is Trump, knowing very little, putting loyalists in all of these key positions, not really having respect for the power and the good in government, and trying to eliminate the bad from the good. And so there's a recklessness about all of these appointments that concerns me, and I remember it from the last go-round, and the last go-round isn't even as bad as this go-round might be. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there's a Norm says you tell one guy to buy stocks and another to sell stocks, and you'll be right, and you'll be right to have the money. I think that's what that states. Anybody can see that Trump didn't win the popular vote in capital letters, screamed from New Rainbow. When you say anybody, I mean, you'll have to show it to me. It is true that the more the votes come in, the more there appears to be a very, very slim majority for Trump. But in any case, and I've heard this from people. Oh, this is interesting. I always my eyes get to I disagree. Phineas says, Mark, I disagree. Democracy, freedom, lawlessness, and the Constitution was on the ballot, not trans or illegals. Well, it might have been on your ballot, but I have told you, I don't think democracy and the Constitution is something that the voters give a crap about. I really don't think that people care about it. Now, it doesn't mean that if you ask them solely about democracy and the Constitution, they wouldn't say, yeah, that's important, democracy and the Constitution. I think most of them would. But what I'm saying is when they evaluate the things that are affecting their lives, democracy and the Constitution, they don't really see it as the thing that's weighing in. Maybe they've gotten too used to it. Maybe they've gotten fat and happy. It's in America, a place where we just kind of have taken for granted the fact that we have these institutions in place. But I just don't believe people get up off the couch and drive to the polling place to vote for defending the Constitution and democracy. They just don't do it.
That would be very American. It would be patriotic. I thought we all loved the country. Isn't that what should motivate us?
Well, I can say, if we love the country so much, how come we have an open border? Blah, 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 blah. You love the country so much. How come you aren't tougher on immigration? You love the country so much. How come you let these legal proceedings continue, the politicization of the Justice Department? I mean, that's what the echo chamber of the right was saying, They're saying, you care about these things, the Constitution and democracy. You say you care about it so much, but you let the weaponization of the Justice Department go on, and the last president is in court all the time. Why? Because of all the stuff that you libs are doing, weaponizing the Justice Department. I mean, again, it's all how you twist the conversation. And so I think there's a rejoinder for every one of these things that is associated with democracy and the Constitution. I'm not saying they're legit. I'm just saying that there is a conversation that they've created around all of it. Now, this is how we get way behind.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Benaloco says, there will be no midterms. It's over, and you all let it happen.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's...
I'm bad. I'm sorry.
Albert makes me laugh always. Randy says, making rent and paying for groceries is more important on a day-to-day basis than some general concern about democracy. Yeah, that's exactly my point. It's a troubling time, for sure. I completely understand it. And let's give at least one person who agrees with me a platform. Hope 216 says, agree, Mark, the average person is so beat down by 40-plus years of neoliberalism, they vote with self-interest. A plank of neoliberalism. Look out for yourself. Screw all else. Yeah. I mean, the neoliberalism to which, Hope 216 refers to is, it has created this gulf between those who have all the money and those who are scrambling to make ends meet. And it will continue. And, those who are angry about neoliberalism, they will point to both parties. But I'd suggest to you the Republicans are not even paying lip service to those government programs that lift up the members of the American population that totally need support. So, all right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Can I do a little news with Kim, and then we can get into It's the Planet Stupid with Belinda? I also have some stuff with... once again, I didn't get to That's Rich. Really? I've got a great That's Rich. What am I going to do?
A couple of law and disorder stories, too. We could get to that tomorrow.
God, yeah. Okay, back. That's right. We've got law and disorder, and That's Rich.
We also have some super chats and super stickers we haven't gotten to.
Well, let's get to those first of all. I'm desperate to acknowledge those who need acknowledgement. Albert, start it up, roll it up. Let's see it. Who are they? Noe Marie says, please clarify how we spell the Kimmy Mac drop. Chip, chip, chip. Is it chip, 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 or CHP, CHP, CHP? Thanks. Spending most of the post-election time on some deep thoughts. Well, it's not chip, chip. It's chit, chit, C-H-I-T. Chit, chit, chit.
Chit, chit.
And that is how you spell it. Chit, chit, chit.
Chit, chit.
That reminds me, I really want to get a mug, or I think a mug with chit, chit, chit on it. I have to talk to the new merch people. I think that's a good one.
I blame you.
I think that's a good one, too. You're right. There are a couple of Kim drops that are pretty strong. I blame you may be another strong one.
I blame you.
Yeah. So we'll talk about it. No contender.
I've learned that chit, chit, chit doesn't go over well when trying to get the husband to be quiet.
No, it doesn't. It's not well received by probably pretty much anybody.
No.
But please talk about Linda McMahon's appointment. 45 and Vince McMahon tied at the hip. DeSantis in 45 opened up WWE and no other promotion was allowed. You're right. This is during COVID. Mm-hmm. They allowed a WWE event to go down. I barely remember this, but you're saying that, yeah, they're all in bed together. I mean, not literally, I should make that point these days, but I get your point that the McMahons are in tight with Donald Trump. He's even been in a WWE event. Albert's our WWE expert, but you're right that they are no contendo. They are tied at the hip, and now she will run the Department of Education if confirmed. Cabinet positions under Trump are like stars in the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Equal, pay enough money and you'll get one. I mean, there is some truth to the fact that these are wealthy donors, some of them who are getting these positions, and the McMahons would seem to fall into that category. Could Biden add 2 seats to the House since the population of the U.S. has increased a lot? That's from Gordon Andrews, blue voter, the $5 super chat. Biden can't add 2 seats to the House, just as Puerto Rico and the District of Columbia have no representative seats in the House. But the House House and Senate could add 2 seats, but it'll just never happen. I don't think. When I say never, I mean, it doesn't appear to be a priority on the horizon. Louis says, hell, Matt, but your point's well taken about the population. Hell, Matt, why not go to a musical with Bobo? She's free and will be awesome for... Albert, read this for me and tell me, this is the Matt Gaetz thing. Hell, Matt, why not go to a musical with Bobo? She's free and will be awesome for cigarettes. In other words, she'll go to a musical with you just for cigarettes. You don't have to actually send her any Venmo money. Yeah, is that what he means? Yeah. Luis, thank you for that. I sometimes need help on the translation, or I need to read it a couple of times. West Theory with a super sticker.
Big shout out.
Thank you. Love the contributions and support of the show. A sample of Trump magic coming. 1, I'm no longer going to tax your overtime. 2, I'm eliminating overtime. And way to go, geniuses. Nice job unscrewing yourselves. Yeah, that's from Luis. I told you that ahead of time. I told you that this whole thing about no tax on overtime was actually going to be a moot point because they're getting rid of overtime in a lot of different areas and different companies. Overtime is going away. So, but what a great thing to run on. It was a little like, I'm going to build a wall and Mexico's going to pay for it. Wes says, I haven't had a raise since COVID and things have gotten more expensive. Just me and husband. So we're doing fine. Families feel it more financially. Yeah, I mean, I think real wages haven't risen in this country in any substantial way. David K. Johnston talks about this all the time. So thank you, Wes. David K. Johnston, if you Google some of his stuff, he's written long pieces about how real wages have not grown. And so you end up with this situation in which it's hard to get by. And then you ask me to vote for democracy and the Constitution on the ballot? Like, yeah. Wait till healthcare costs go through the roof, says Just Give Me the Truth. That's another thing. Well, you got Dr. Oz in charge of helping to reduce those costs. I don't know. Anyway, the chat continues. You're welcome to join, as I say, in the chat right now, or you can wait until after hours trading and join us in the chat after the chat wraps up live. We are a live show, 2 to 4 Eastern, 1 to 11 to 1 Pacific. I'm trying to rush through so I can get to Kim's news. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Right on. Yeah.
Oh, is that me? I'm Kim McAllister, and this is the news on the Mark Thompson Show, and it is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Today marks President Biden's 82nd birthday. Woohoo! Happy birthday! It extends his record as the oldest sitting American president. The White House says that President Biden returned from his trip to Brazil late last night, apparently making his way out of the jungle. He is expected to celebrate his birthday with his family. The president's age-related record may only last a few years, though, as President-elect Trump will be 82 years and 7 months old at the end of his second term in January of 2029.
Yeah, in your face, Biden. Trump will be the oldest guy.
That's right. The U.S. Embassy in Ukraine is temporarily closing after warnings of possible significant air attacks by Russian forces. The U.S. Embassy in Kyiv issuing the urgent warning this morning, saying it had received specific information about potential attacks and that its employees should shelter in place. This warning comes one day after Ukraine's military, for the first time, used American missiles to strike inside Russian territory. New report from CNN today says the Trump Department of Government Efficiency is expected to end remote work across federal agencies. doing that as a way to help reduce the workforce through attrition, thinking the folks who've been working from home will be so frustrated they'll just quit.
Well, you could, let me just make one point. They want
Yeah.
to cut $2 trillion, at least that's what they're saying. I think they're just kind of making up figures, but you could fire everybody, get rid of every federal employee. You won't cut $2 trillion. So I don't know, this is all stuff around the edges, but we'll talk more about it as the administration takes hold and see what they actually do.
A report related to an investigation into President-elect Trump's pick for Attorney General, Matt Gaetz, is the focus today of this closed-door meeting by the House Ethics Committee. Some Senate Republicans and Democrats have said they would like to review this report about allegations of sexual misconduct and illicit drug use before Gaetz's confirmation hearing next year. Some Republicans have said the report should not come out because Gaetz resigned from Congress after being nominated by Trump, and the committee no longer has any jurisdiction there. The undocumented immigrant found guilty of murdering Georgia nursing student Laken Riley is going to prison for life without the possibility of parole. Jose Ibarra was convicted of all 10 counts by the judge who handed down the verdict after Ibarra waived his right to a jury trial. The prosecution said Ibarra went hunting for women on the University of Georgia campus and encountered Riley on her morning run in February. And again, the verdict, life in prison without the possibility of parole for him.
He might be better off in a prison than going back to, what was it, Venezuela, where he came from, right? Yeah.
One person is dead, hundreds of thousands without power after storms battered the Northwest. A woman was killed last night when a tree fell on a homeless encampment north of Seattle. Its so-called bomb cyclone brought winds of up to 77 miles an hour, and that system is now expected to continue drenching Northern California. I've heard the rain pouring this morning here in the North Bay.
Yeah, it's biblical rain in Northern California, and that bomb cyclone refers to the drop in pressure, and that's what creates that intense wind velocity. It's really, it's scary what's happening right now.
A new study shows that the climate change has intensified the recent hurricanes by 18 miles per hour. A study published in the journal Environmental Research Climate found that human-driven changes have caused changes in 84% of hurricanes. Between 2019 and 2023, they were an average of more than 8 meters per second faster than they would have been in a world without climate change.
This is Casey Kasem in Hollywood.
Yes, and this is the latest hurricanes are 18 miles an hour faster on our survey.
This is Casey Kasem in Hollywood.
The top spot on our survey is 2024's hurricanes. 18 miles an hour faster.
This is Casey Kasem in Hollywood.
All right. Thank you.
The researchers studied 38 hurricanes. They found 32 of them were intensified by a big rise in sea surface temperature.
Oh.
This is Casey Kasem in Hollywood.
All right, Albert.
Out of 32 hurricanes that were studied, the most intense were in 2024. And our top spot on the survey, back to you, Kim.
They're really not rolling out the welcome mat for the new trans representative in Congress. Her name is Sarah McBride. Now,
yeah, because trans people haven't taken enough crap these days. I'm sure they need more. Yeah.
The Speaker of the House says transgender women, like incoming Congresswoman-elect Sarah McBride, will not be allowed to use women's restrooms at the Capitol. The statement from Louisiana Republican Mike Johnson says all single-sex facilities in the Capitol and House office buildings, restrooms, changing rooms, locker rooms, are reserved for individuals of that biological gender. He noted that each representative's office has its own private bathroom and that the U.S. Capitol also has unisex restrooms.
Yeah.
Asked about how Congresswoman Nancy Mace's effort to restrict women's bathrooms will affect McBride, Johnson said, "We treat all people with dignity and respect." Another court loss for Louisiana Republicans. They want to post the 10 Commandments in all public school classrooms. Last week, a federal judge blocked that legislation, saying it's unconstitutional, people. The state appealed, lost it again. This time, a federal appeals court shot down the law. Civil rights groups who filed the suit on behalf of parents argued the law is akin to state-sponsored religion. Los Angeles lawmakers working to solidify the city's sanctuary city status. City Council yesterday unanimously voting to adopt a sanctuary city ordinance that prohibits city personnel or resources being used to help federal enforcement of immigration laws. That the legislation ordinance now heads to Mayor Karen Bass's desk for signature. More than a dozen homeless shelters in Los Angeles are in danger of shutting down because of underfunding. Hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars have been spent fighting homelessness. The numbers are down, but the trend might not continue because the nonprofits that operate the shelters say they're not getting paid enough to keep the doors open. Now, the money does look like it's available. Last week, the city controller's office identified more than $500 million earmarked for homeless services left unspent at the end of the previous fiscal year. And another big campus protest, a wave of pro-Palestinian protesters at UCLA. The demonstration yesterday led to a tense face-off between protesters and law enforcement. Campus police and riot gear encircled about 100 demonstrators at Bruin Plaza. The protesters were cleared out by late afternoon, and apparently no arrests were made there. They've got some plans to bring a cannabis lounge to Sacramento. Those plans moving forward after the city council in Sacramento approved the creation of such lounges in the capital city. The worry is that the secondhand smoke from these cannabis lounges could cause problems for people nearby. But dozens of people came out to that meeting yesterday to weigh in on the public
Where my
comment.
weed smokers at?
I guess they're all at that meeting.
And lastly, I think we have a picture of this one, Albert. Jay Leno is recuperating after a roll down a 60-foot hill.
Yeah.
This guy, I mean, if the last time he was burned because of some type of car explosion.
Then he had a motorcycle accident after he was burned. And in both cases, his face was like, torn off or scraped up.
Well, you should see him this time. His whole face is bruised. The 74-year-old comedian spoke to TMZ with a bruised face, an eye patch, and his arm in a brace.
Well, I did see him. I should see him. I saw him just yesterday. Here he is standing next to me. That's Tim Conway on the right. That's Jay Leno in the middle. And that's me on the left.
Oh, you saw his bruised face in person?
Yeah, just yesterday.
Wow.
He was in on the show on KFI. But you're right, probably you can see he's got the eye patch and the black and blue face. And I guess that's posted on the Conway show Instagram. But yeah, he did a whole interview with, I think that's all there is, Albert. Sorry. There is an interview with him on TMZ.
Yeah.
And they really do, show even more of him. Meaning he had a back and forth, and he's sort of just like, typical Jay, just keeps on going. It's like, yeah, okay, you on any pain pills, Jay? Not really. I'm not a pill guy. I don't really, I'm just going to tough it out. It's like, wow. I mean, and there he is. And you can see a little bit of the black and blue on the.
His whole half of his face is totally bruised.
Yeah.
He said this happened Friday night before a stand-up show. The LA Times said he'd stepped out for dinner before doing a show at the Palace Theater in Pittsburgh and decided to take a shortcut to the restaurant. He wound up tumbling 60 feet down a hill, hitting his head on several rocks along the way. Despite those injuries, Leno went on stage and performed on Friday night. He said, "The show must go on." So there he is.
I love it. Yeah.
Report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. They have the new holiday blend. It is out.
Oh, yes. Have you ordered it yet? I've got to order some.
No, I haven't done it yet, but it's on my to-do list. They also have a winter solstice blend tea. Ooh, what's in the cup today?
I have the Ocotillo espresso today, and it's delicioso. I'll tell you what I did today with my Coachella Valley coffee. I have the Ocotillo espresso, and I had a shot of that. Then I made another shot because it was so good. Then I made a French press because I thought Courtney would want some. So I have the French press, which is in this cup right now. It's the Ocotillo espresso still. Then I took the shots of the espresso. I took the one extra shot that I'd made, and I put it in here, and it's just got a nice...
Good stuff.
It's got a heavenly feel to it. Oh, my God.
CoachellaValleyCoffee.com and get your Mark Thompson Show exclusive discount,
Yes.
10% off. And boy, is this coffee and tea worth it. Really, really good. You just type in Mark T all together at the discount code at checkout, and that gets you 10% off your total. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
Love that.
Yeah, I'm Kim McAllister, and this is the Mark Thompson Show.
Mark Thompson Show.
back from the road, and we are excited about restarting a regular segment that looks at the world, the environment, and the planet. In fact, we call it It's the Planet, Stupid.
The planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet.
Earth. A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet stupid.
No. It's the planet, stupid.
She is back from the road, our eco-journalist, our host, I was going to say, for It's the Planet Stupid. She's Belinda Weymouth. Yeah. Hi, Belinda.
Hi, how is everyone? How are
We are
you?
well. We are excited to have you back. Where were you?
Well, I was in Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia. And it was absolutely fantastic and amazing. And I have two good eco stories to share with you guys from the road.
Please.
So, yeah. Should we go right into those, or should we talk about what's happening in the world a little bit first? You tell me.
Whatever you want. It's your segment. You decide. Spencer Griffin saying, Mark, would you and Belinda please discuss what might happen with federal lands, wild lands under the next administration? What about Anwar, for example, national parks? You can start there if you want. Spencer Griffith wants you to start there.
Okay. Let's do that next week, Spencer, because...
There's a lot there, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there.
Look, the thing is, there's so much going on because we've got COP29 happening right now, and they're down to the final days and the negotiations. And of course, it's, they're talking about money, what our developed countries going to give to the developing countries. And the EU is talking, hey, we're going to give you 200 to 300 billion. And the developing countries are saying, no, we need trillions of dollars, not billions. And the good thing is that, China is talking about, what they can do, and they're being pressured, and there are all these sort of side negotiations happening because China wasn't initially designated as one of the donor countries because in the 1990s, the UN designated them not a developed country, and so they didn't get into the donor portion of
that's
the
interesting.
of the group. Yeah. But the fact is they're the biggest greenhouse gas emitter now. They don't think they'll ever surpass the US for total greenhouse gas emissions, but they've already passed all 27 EU countries, and they are ahead of the US now with their emissions. And they are putting money into Africa, as far as energy production goes. But all the developed nations have to do more. And one of the things that I think about often with this is they don't talk about the geopolitical side of it. And maybe it's too much of a touchy subject, but you know how we have this incredible reaction worldwide to migrants right now. There are too many of them. Everyone's trying to stop them coming in. Trump will be, building that wall, January 22nd, or 21st, or, adding to the wall, the bits of his wall that haven't fallen over, or maybe the bits that have fallen over, he'll be putting them back up. And European countries are paying North African countries to use their militia to stop, Africans getting on boats to try and get across the Mediterranean to European countries. But the reason, and we've talked about this before on the show, there are people on the move because of droughts and things, Kim just talked about, and thank you, Kim, for having that piece of environmental news in your news broadcast. Hurricanes are 18% worse because of climate change. Well, we're getting worse droughts and more hunger, and that's a huge push factor when it comes to migration. And so the spending of money, the investing of money in developing countries that are really being affected by climate change and by droughts is super, super important, especially as this migration is sort of pushing this mass movement to, populist, nationalistic kind of right-wing governments. We're seeing this the world over. So maybe that's too heady and too kind
No,
of
it's.
big.
I mean,
but
you're
think
saying
it's-
essentially that the environmental issues and these migrant issues come together, and they come together in a big, ugly mess that's being played out all across the world. I think it's very, very much on point. But let's, to your first comment, we'll pick up more on this next week. Maybe we can do it in a succinct way that still allows us to get to other things, because we have so much to get to in this segment right now. But I do think that snapshot that you just gave us was a useful one. And, you know, these countries that are meeting now with varying degrees of either responsibility or leaning in with help as to the overall problem, even as though it falls well short of what has to be expected. That's all worth noting. And that list is going to change and shift as this new administration comes in as well. So please go ahead, Belinda, with the other stuff, because I'm curious about your trip and what you learned from the trip related to what you care about, which is, eco-journalism.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I loved, and I'd really love to have have the guys on who are doing this in Laos, but it's really difficult because of the time difference. But anyway, I'm going to see if I can get one of them to agree to getting up in the middle of the night to come on the show and talk to us, because what they're doing is really amazing. So
and we can record something too. That's always an option.
Oh,
so we can change
let's
the
do
time.
that.
Yeah. Anyway, please proceed.
Perfect,
Go ahead.
perfect.
Yeah.
So the bear bile industry in Asia is huge, and it is thousands and thousands of beautiful bears, sun bears, moon bears, all these incredible animals. And so we visited one of the sanctuaries of Free the Bears. And
well, wait a minute, because just to be clear, bear bile, when you say it's huge, what is it?
So to back up and give everyone, so everyone is aware of crazy things like rhino horns, and that Asians believe that a rhino's horn is a super aphrodisiac. And
some
I've
Asians
said it
believe it, right? Okay.
And I'll say it again. Yeah. Sorry. I don't want to, So a rhino's horn is exactly like our fingernails. It's a glutenated hair, people. That's all it is. It has no medicinal benefits whatsoever. And the other horrible industry is this, and there are others as well, obviously, but the one I want to focus on today is bear bile. So bear bile, they have been using it since the 1st century. And bile, is made in the liver, it's stored in the gallbladder. And now what's happened is thousands and thousands, they say in China alone, 10,000 bears are kept in cages. And these cages are small, they often can't stand up, they can't turn around. They're kept in there for their whole lives. They're not fed enough, they're dehydrated. And they do live harvesting, which is absolutely revolting because...
Just to be clear, not to interrupt again, but bile, just to explain what it is, it's a digestive...
acid. And
yes,
so
it breaks
the name
down,
of it
breaks down things in digestion. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's ursodeoxycholic acid. But here's the crazy thing about it. So yes, it can help with gallstones and it can help with liver disease, but you can synthetically make this acid. But unfortunately, what people believe is it's a cure-all for so many different things: acne, hangovers, indigestion, cancer. I mean, the list goes on and on. During COVID, Chinese, people were being encouraged to get injections that had bear bile in them. And what used to happen was they used to kill the bears and get their gallbladders out to get the bile. Now what they do is they go, hey, if we keep the bears alive for 10 years, even if it's in these horrific conditions, we just can harvest continuously from them. And we have this bear bile. Now, where we were staying, Mark, in Luang Prabang, which is this beautiful World UNESCO, heritage site in Laos, they are selling, like just down the road from the hotel we were in, there are all these bear bile products. They're putting it in shampoo and in toothpaste. I mean, it's absolutely crazy, because when you look at the conditions that the bears are kept in order to harvest this bear bile, it's so inhumane. And they will kill a mother in the wild, a mother bear, take her cubs and use them, for the bear bile as they get, old enough to start harvesting.
And again, it's I'm trying to remember. It's like a not a pipe, but what am I trying to say? Like a there's a little they connect something into the bear. Is that how they do it?
They drain what they do is they call it a fistula. So it's you make a hollow device. They're using non-veterinarians to do this, and they sort of puncture into the bear's side where they think the gallbladder is. Now they often miss, and then they insert a tube. And so
tube, that's the word I was thinking before.
Tube. And they just harvest continuously the bile from the bear. Now, it's inhumane. It's awful. They have crush cages, which
restrict the movement. Right.
Yeah, they even have these metal jackets, which are like a medieval torture device that they use to hold the bear still. But the problem is they've analyzed the bile that they get out of them. Now they sell it as a liquid, they sell it in powder and pill form. It has pus in it. It has urine, feces, bacteria. It has cancer cells, because a lot of these bears develop cancer because the conditions that they're being farmed in are so revolting. And it did come on. I see someone talking about, what about animal rights? So it got on the radar in the 90s. And when people discovered how huge this industry is and how ghastly it is, there was a big outcry. Now, the Chinese government, they have the most bears. They're saying 10,000 bears are in cages. They said, well, we're now regulating it. The fistula, the tube has to be a natural one that's made out of the bear's own tissue, and it's okay. Well, I don't see how you can make a bear.
I'm ready to stipulate at this point to the fact that this is a horrifying, awful process of they call it harvesting. Yeah. I mean, even we've used the term here. It's despicable. It's grotesque. Yeah. It's incredibly inhumane. It's terrible. So now let me get to the rescue part of it. If I don't mean to, but I just want to try to get people to sort of more hopeful, because you did visit a reserve, I guess, a sanctuary. Thank you for the bears that are.
I sent footage of the bears that we saw, and so these are rescued bears, and they look fantastic. Though there are pictures that they show of them when they first get them, and they've been in these awful cage, these sort of metal jackets, and so they're minus hair. I mean, these bears will. Some of them actually, they self-mutilate. They do all kinds of things because it's so ghastly. But these are rescued bears. So there's an organization, Free the Bears. They're not the only ones that are in Asia. There are lots of different ones. But this is in Laos. And these bears are now, getting to hang out in these enclosures. And obviously, you'd prefer them to be in the wild. But the fact that they're in an enclosure. And the interesting thing about this one is there are hundreds of thousands of tourists coming through this area because it's on a way to this really beautiful waterfall. And a lot of them are Chinese tourists. And so they don't do a really heavy-hitting thing about the bear bile, but they do show the conditions that they've been living in. But they are rescuing hundreds of bears, and they are rescuing bear cubs, and they are rehabilitating them, and they are raising awareness. And the thing that I thought might be interesting for some of our listeners, since we have holiday season coming up. So Free the Bears organization, you can become a sponsor of a bear. You can adopt a bear. There are all these different ways that you can become involved. And a thing I like to do at Christmas, or at gift giving time, is think about people who I know already have tons of material goods and what would they like to do. And I did this for my father-in-law a few years ago, and I gave him a gift, for protecting grizzly bears. And he was kind of a grizzly bear of a man. Well, he loved it. He loved it. He thought it was so cool. And I think it's, it's just, those are sun bears. They have that lovely little sort of like a collar of tan colored fur under their throats. These bears have 30-centimeter long tongues. I mean, almost a foot long tongues, so they can, get stuff that's in the middle of trees. Here are the workers who work at this sanctuary. And it's small, but they are rescuing more and more bears all the time. And, bears aren't the only animals that are endangered, because the thing is, you can catch a wild animal, it costs you nothing. And in Laos, you can see them in markets, they're selling snakes, they're selling tortoises, all these, wild animals, civets, monkeys. But the more, they're talking about bear bile in California, someone in the comments, I'm like, what?
Oh, yeah, that was just
They
catch people once in a while trying to poach bears in California for their bile. They may or may not be, but the reality is it's mostly an Asian thing, and it's across Asia. I mean, it's right. I mean,
it's across Asia, but they find bear bile, the products, they find them in Australia and other countries. If you've got a big population who believe that this has medicinal value, you're going to be able to find a market for it. And the fact they're putting it in toothpaste and shampoo, this is idiotic. You don't need to put bear bile on your hair. It's just,
as you say, they're seeing it in some kind of medicinal way. So this sanctuary, maybe we can post a link to it, Albert, underneath this video, and also underneath the breakout video of It's the Planet Stupid, and you can help free the bears and protect the bears, become a bear carer, as they say. And the actual website, though, for those who are listening, who are not watching on YouTube and probably will just listen across the various audio platforms, give us the website, if you would, please, Belinda.
So it's Free the Bears. That's what it is. It's Free the
.com
Bears.
or .org?
Yeah. Like www. Freethebears.com.
Yeah, I get it, but is it .com? Yeah. Okay, so it's freethebears.com. Freethebears.com. Okay, cool. It's such a, again, it's heartbreaking. So I think it's a great idea.
It's .org. It's not .com. It's .org.
Okay. Can we get our act together on this show? We don't even know what the my God. It's good. Only got 10 minutes about
it's my first day
back.
back.
We don't even know it's .com or .org. How dare you
come on? My first day back. Give me a break.
This is a word from the Lord, and He's not happy.
Yeah, the Lord's not happy. Get your act together on .org.com. It's .org. Freethebears.org. All right. Anyway, Albert will put a link to it under this video. But if you're listening, that's a great idea for just for the giving season. Adopt a bear, and I think it's a very it's a clever way to support. What else do you have for us?
Yeah. Well, okay. So one of that story that you sent me the other day about the droughts and how they're stopping countries like Zambia, who were going to be running on 100% hydropower, but because of droughts, the Zambezi is down to a little trickle. So energy, I think, is very important right now, because we also have this burgeoning AI and cryptocurrency, and the amount of energy that this stuff uses is unbelievable. AI, they're saying by 2026 will be using as much energy as the whole country of Japan. Japan right now has 120 million people living in it. So what's happening, because of AI and this insatiable need for energy and crypto, is we are turning, and some listeners are always asking about this, to nuclear. They're about to bring back online one of the reactors, not one of the reactors that failed, but one of the reactors that didn't fail at 3 Mile Island. Very infamous, because in 1979, that was the worst commercial nuclear power plant accident. And it's being brought back online to power Microsoft's data centers. And everyone I know who works in crypto is saying, yes, nuclear, we're going to have nuclear. Bill Gates has already put $1 billion into nuclear for AI. And yeah, Elon Musk, of course, he wants his own power plant. So there is going to be this shift. And as I have said often on the show, the thing about nuclear is it's, always over budget. It's always blows by its date when it's supposed to be coming online. It takes longer than we thought. But what happened last year, because of the droughts that happened, India and China, which both, China in particular, that Three Gorges hydro plant that they have, they produce a lot of hydro, but because of droughts, India and China, along with other countries, had to use more coal. They had to revert to burning more coal for energy. And so when we thought greenhouse gas emissions were actually going to be lower last year, they weren't. For energy, electricity production, they were higher. So, I think it's going to be inevitable because our need for energy is going to be increasing because of these technologies. I mean, one of the things they say about AI is it could help us solve climate change. And it does seem to me like we do need some entity that can really see the big picture with the climate and all the different factors that are going on, like the geopolitical, what's happening politically in the world and how, that ties in. But
well, and that's what the COP nations are supposed to be doing, and that's the idea, that we get everybody together and that we make a plan, both when it comes to climate and climate change. That's what COP24 is about, or energy policies, such that the world works together. I mean, that is the idea. I just think as a practical matter, it's very hard for this stuff to happen because nations' interests aren't all aligned, and so you end up in some sort of adversarial relationship with a lot of the other nations at the table,
Yeah. I mean, but we're in this, it's a real juggling act right now, and we just have to get smart about it. I mean, we really, really do. Because, the shift to renewables is happening no matter what administration, we have here in the US. The shift is happening. It makes business sense. So it is happening. And I mean, we'll obviously see what happens in the new year and, what the Trump administration might be able to walk back. But I think there is other things that there's already so much momentum, with them moving forward.
Well, as I say, they're competing interests even within this new administration. So you end up with, having to handle the oil and gas lobbies and concerns, wealthy donors. And that's in both parties, by the way. But Trump obviously has, really bows to them. And so this gets back to something you'll talk about next week when you talk about ANWR, the Alaska National Wildlife Refuge, and these pristine landscapes that will be defiled by oil drilling. It seems inevitable under this administration. They'll at least be green lit. Sometimes it's not going to serve the bottom line for them to do it. For actually them get into developing those various oil and gas rigs can be expensive, and sometimes it doesn't serve their bottom line at that moment in time. But the leases are clearly going to be granted by this administration. So,
and then begins the legal fight, and the legal fights can, be long and arduous. So yes, we will see what happens. But
here's something for you. Debbie says, I worked in the Jinnah nuclear power plant in upstate New York in my 20s. Right after, quote, a minor accident. All these plants are well overdue for revamping. It is true that it's like old technology that is at 3 Mile Island and even at Diablo Canyon. I mean, these are these are nuclear power plants that really have old school technologies in them. Yet we're bringing them back online.
Yeah, fission, not fusion, and fusion is the way that we're going. that's what Bill Gates and everyone wants to do.
Well, would be a real technological breakthrough. I mean, if you could break through in that area. All right, let's we'll call it a day today. I love that you went to the bear bile
rescue facility,
area. And, it's funny, we did have an elephant rescue person on. Lek is her name. Lek's a pretty common name, I think, over that way. And she runs an elephant rescue charity. And that was a couple of years ago. We had her on the radio with us at KGO. I was there in Laos not too long ago. I want to say it's like 4 years ago. I loved it there. Never even knew about the bear bile rescue and refuge that I saw the markets and all the rest, but I feel like you just gave me a window on Laos that I didn't have when I was there. And on you were in Luang Prabang, is that what you said?
Luang Prabang. And actually, we went to an elephant rescue, female elephants who've been rescued from the logging industry. So I could about that next week because they were really
great.
fantastic.
That's great.
They were cool. They were cool.
It's a great community, that Long Prabon. We had a great stay there, but we're there for I think for like 5 days. But I feel now cheated, like I have to go back to see the elephant.
You do.
Yeah.
Oh, to see these bears and the elephants. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the bears again. And again, the
beautiful,
link to these bears is underneath this video in YouTube. Belinda, thank you. Love having you back, and I look forward to next week. Thanks a lot.
My
Belinda
pleasure.
Weymouth,
Great to see
everybody.
you guys. Bye-bye.
That's It's the Planet Stupid.
More.
It's the planet stupid.
No. It's the planet stupid.
Next time, only on the Mark Thompson Show.
I'd say now it's the Planet Stupid as opposed to it's the Planet Stupid. I think it's the Planet Stupid. I really think that's where we are now. So I don't know. I mean,
the Mark Thompson Show.
I will tell you that it is time, Albert, to wrap this bad boy up. No Contendo says, will Americans go to Canada for private health care? Yeah. I mean, the healthcare industry may be undergoing some changes, but it's already not in the best place. But they may roll back Obamacare. So to the extent that, you may not be a fan of Obamacare, I don't know, of the ACA, I'd say the one thing that Obamacare did for you and does for you is it allows for pre-existing conditions, as it's called, to be covered by insurance. So if you care about that, that's something that may be going away under a Trump administration, if they can get it through. If I had money, I'd donate to all of those kinds of things. Poor animals, says Kristen. Yeah, it's tough. It is really tough to be an animal on this planet. After the election, I'm clinically depressed. After the bear thing, I'm going to bed.
Oh, no.
Oh, my God. Marilyn. Well, I am...
we're in better shape, but I don't think we're in wildly better shape.
We're not in wildly better shape. Canada will let you in if you're rich, says John Watson. Well, I don't know. Next year, our insurance is going to let us get some scripts from Canada. That'll be interesting. It is weird how we pay more than any other country on earth for our prescription drugs. Yeah,
we're getting fleeced.
I would have hit that hard had I been running for president. But again, I don't know that would have carried the day because it seems as though America was pretty spring-loaded for the guy they got. So that's
the Mark Thompson Show.
I don't know why it clicks by so quickly, Albert. I blame
you.
All right, maybe it's my fault. Yeah, maybe it is my fault. I wanted to get to Law and Disorder today. I got a really good Law and Disorder. I worked hard all night on Law and Disorder. I've curated it, and then I didn't get to it, Albert. And then I have a That's Rich that's also pretty terrific. I curated that. I'm up all night curating that. That, I want to move the whole thing to tomorrow, Albert. I'm counting on you to make that happen, all right? Kim, thank you. The After Party Live begins in just a few minutes.
We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Kim hosts that magical thing. Yeah. Yes. Share, like, and subscribe, everybody. That's our thing now these days. Thanks, everyone.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
I, of course, have to get off to see that guy about that thing. I'm a very busy man. Very big deal. Until tomorrow, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.